Hello, welcome to today's Convos and Coffee, and we are in the mix of our Christmas editions, which is so exciting. My little title for today is Jesus is our hope for humanity. So let's turn to Luke chapter 2, verse 1 to 7, and I'm going to read it for you. At that time, the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. And this was the first census taken by the governor of Syria. And so all people returned to their own ancestral towns to register for this census. And it became Joseph was the descendant of King David, and he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea. So David's ancient home. And he traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee, and he took Mary, whom he was engaged, and now was expecting a child. And while they were there, it came time for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in a manger because there was no lodging available for them. And so this little passage gives us a brief explanation of how unusual Jesus' birth really was. Jesus was born during a demanding and busy tax and population count. It was such a busy season as people were traveling back and forth, going to where they were originally from. And just planning a vacation on itself is a lot. Imagine having to go back to the place you were born to go do a lot of documentation. It's a lot. Plus you're pregnant, that's a lot. And so he was born to such a wild situation. His parents were not yet married. They were engaged, but they hadn't taken that next step of the official I do. They hadn't consecrated their marriage yet. And so Mary was still a virgin, but she was also pregnant via the Holy Spirit. And even though they weren't married, Joseph and Mary shouldn't actually even be traveling together because they weren't officially married. And so the family must have thought, well, it makes the most sense that you guys are betrothed, and so it makes more sense for you to go together. And so Joseph ended up taking her to Bethlehem, and likely it was also to partially avoid scandal, as I'm sure like that would have been the talk of the town. And so such a wild history behind how Jesus was born. And it's crazy how this story would fulfill a prophecy and change absolutely everything. And so as they were on their way, there wasn't a thing like a hotel. That wasn't a thing back then. And so when they were looking for a place to stay in Bethlehem, they also had to ask the question, where is a good place to give birth? And so because the town was so full, there likely wasn't many good spots that they could stay. So they ended up staying in a stable with animals, weird smells, probably some ungodly sounds, and likely some bugs. And here, this is the environment where Mary brought forth Jesus and laid him in a stone feeding manger. And this was likely such a quiet birth. We don't know if there was somebody helping Mary give birth, but likely no more than a small crowd to deliver this child into such an ugly environment with no praise, no toys, like nothing. And I just can't help but stop to think and be reminded, like, how beautiful of a story that God, who created absolutely everything, stepped out of heaven, out of all of his glory, all of his praise, and was laid in a manger in one of the ugliest places to be born, with no praise, no celebration, no party, even though, like, it's probably what he deserves. But Jesus wanted to give us an example of what true humility looks like, that he humbled himself to such a lowly birth, so that he could come to serve, come to eventually die on the cross so that we could have the possibility of being in relationship with him. And this is love. Like, this is love. And it's just so beautiful that Jesus, in all of his splendor in heaven, came down to nothing because he wanted to be hope for humanity. He wanted to relate to the people. He wanted to be available for all people. So this Christmas, let's just remember the sacrifice that God walked into so that he could be our hope, so that he could be our restoration, that he could be our freedom. Merry Christmas, Bethel family.